The Federal and Chettinadu Public School jointly present Run for Health Karegudi Marathon 2025 on March 2. This event is co-presented by Global Mission Hospital and Research Institute, powered by Repco Home Finance, associate sponsor Sethu Bhaskara College.
So many communities have used Ramayana to spread their own messages. To illustrate the point, they will draw story from some other Puranas or some other version of Ramayana and try to give useful lessons which people can use in day-to-day life. Whichever culture, language, linguistic group, geography you can find some characters facing the same dilemma that you are facing in Ramayana. Because black is the color of Krishna, Kali and all. But in English, black is always associated with a villain. So different saints, different rishis, different storytellers have gone through alternate endings for Ramayana.
Hello and welcome to Culture Vibes, the Federal's special program in which we talk to writers and artists about their work. I'm joined by a very special guest today, best-selling author Anand Neelakantan, whose new book, Many Ramayanas, Many Lessons, has just come out. Actually, it was an audio book in Hindi and English on Audible, which he has written in a storytelling, format. Using the oral storytelling format and developed into a book. And welcome to the show. Thank you so much for making the time for me.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Okay, so Ramayana, as you write, of course, has had countless retellings. Each era had its own, has produced its own retelling, which sort of differ very widely from Valmiki's Ramayana. And I wanted to ask you, you write somewhere in the book that A.K. Ramanujan had actually put the number to 300, but according to you, this could be thousands or even lakhs of Ramayanas that could have been written. What makes it so dynamic and so adaptable for every age?
Actually, there is a Ramayana-related story in almost every village in India. And somehow or other, there is an association with Ramayana. That Ram had come or Hanuman had come there or something related to that with Raman. Both Ramayana and Mahabharata is so interwoven with not just India but across Asia, a lot of cultures. So what has happened over the years, so many stories have evolved, so many communities have used Ramayana to spread their own messages. So much intercultural narrations have happened, and some of them are very fascinating. So I have just given a glimpse of what is available in my book, actually. So vast and diverse.
Right. And you write that there are, of course, countless Ramayanas, but each of them are valid and authentic in their own ways. And even though they have mutated and grown into different languages and different cultures, there is something very authentic about each of these variations. Why do you think it's possible with a text like this?
Because this is more a cultural text. It is also religious and spiritual text, but each of the cultures have used it in various forms. So it comes as art forms, it comes as paintings, it comes as folk tales, it comes as drama, plays and songs. And in every context, every stages of life, something or other related to Ramayana is used in many of the communities. And they are mostly localized, the Ramayana. So we find that most of the geographies explained in Ramayana, they have been confined to certain places which each community has made. They are transposed the entire geography to their own area. And sometimes you find Lanka in the same village or in the same jungle when it comes to tribal Ramayanas. Lanka is across the river and Kishkinda is also nearby. Ayodhya is also nearby. So there is this kind of total transposing the entire text and making it hyper local, which helped it to evolve over the years and achieve its own local flavors as it went through. So that is what I am discussing about in the book, and I am telling it in a narrative storytelling format. So mainly it is a narrator's art rather than a scholar's book. So what I have done is I have done it like how they usually tell stories in India, the oral storytellers. So they just start the story of Ramayana, they pause to reflect at some point. To illustrate the point, they will draw story from some other Puranas or some other version of Ramayana and try to give useful lessons which people can use in day-to-day life. So Ramayana was always used like that. So my storytelling format, unlike the other books which has come in the same space, which are mostly done by scholars, research scholars with a lot of gravity and depth, and they are writing it for a research audience. Mine is for the common man, and I am using it like how the Ramayana has been told over the centuries. I am using the same format of oral storytelling. It was an audiobook initially, so even in the printed text, you find the same taste and flavor of it, the oral
Yeah.
storytelling.
Indeed. And while some of us are familiar with some interpretations and some versions of Ramayanas like tribal, and you have different interpretations in the south, I was intrigued by this Muslim Ramayana. What exactly is this, and how does it differ from the core of these different versions of Ramayana?
The value system doesn't change. Only culturally, what happens is it is written in the Muslim Mapla Arab Malayalam language, maybe 16th or 17th century product, or perhaps later than that. Scholars differ on that, but that is not our problem actually. It's beautiful that the entire cultural context has been set up, and it is not for the mainstream. It is meant for giving moral values using the same Ramayana to the community, where it has been transposed to the Muslim community, and a lot of universal moral values are told in the storytelling format, where all the characters are Muslims, and a lot of lessons from Quran has been interwoven with what is there in Ramayana, and we can see how beautifully it blends. Same way, you have Catholic Ramayana in Philippines, where a lot of Christian values have been imbibed into the Ramayana. So each culture, this is just told to say that each culture has made Ramayana of its own
Of
and
its
used
own.
it
Yeah.
to of its own and used it to give values as a great story, as
Right.
values to its next generation.
And what, according to you, is the singular uh, uh, lesson that remains uniform across these retellings?
The singular lesson is that there is no singular lesson. That's it's a
Yeah.
collection of so many stories, and what you find is in every stage of life,
Mhm.
whichever culture, language, linguistic group, geography you are, you can find some characters facing the same dilemma that you are facing in Ramayana. So that is how they have used it everywhere. So you find in Telugu folk tales, they're using Ramayana when a bride is getting married and going to the groom's house. They use the context of Sita, they use the context of Mandodari. Like that, you find a father trying to take a decision when the children are growing up. Again, fall back into the dilemma of Dasharath. Then the duty of the son towards the father and the society. So it is used again and again to find answers to various problems that come in life, and it is also a text debating on what is right and wrong without any moral conclusion. So each community will find its own moral choices, and as you know, the morality is not stagnant. The morality or even the dharma is not stagnant. It keeps changing as per time and context. So what is right in one society need not be right in some other era in some other society. So the Ramayana, you can find evolving to take this also into consideration. So sometimes you find Ramayanas which are, while not deviating much from the original tale, being very sympathetic to characters like Tataka. Uh, in some Ramayanas, it is that Tataka fell in love with Ram, and that's why she approached him. Uh, Not Shurpanaka I am talking about. Shurpanaka, of course, that version more people will be familiar. But
Yeah.
Tataka also comes to Ram,
Mm.
but the rishis say that she is a Rakshasi and she has to be killed, and she is killed. So the entire that portion of the tale in the folk tales is told from the Tataka side of
Mm.
how this princess of the forest, who was orphaned because of the curses, her husband was cursed, and how she had gone on rampage, but yet she felt love towards Ram, and it was
Mm.
a love that killed her because she felt uh, not ready to attack.
Mm.
Whereas from Ram's point of view, she was a Rakshasi who was attacking all the rishis. So these kind of very subtle changes and sympathizing with other characters, the marginalized characters you can find. We don't know who had written it, when that was written, but humanizing each and every character in Ramayana, including Surpanaga, Ravan,
Mm.
Mantara,
Yeah.
Tataka, we can find which makes it so fascinating. So it
Mm.
doesn't essentially make anybody villain. It doesn't make Ram villain or Ravan villain or anything. The folk versions make every character vulnerable and every character relatable to day-to-day life.
Right. Right.
So it dwells with Ravan's dilemma, like a man who is madly in love and knows
Hmm.
that he's going to lose everything, but still in love, rather than just being in this cardboard villain who just kidnapped one's wife.
Hmm.
He comes as a character who is what you call, who actually helplessly fell in love with a woman,
Hmm.
knows that he has done wrong, but he is not able to give up on her, and it is the love that kills him. So, as a tragic hero, tales come. It
Right.
comes also as certain tales where Sita is told as the daughter of Ravan, not in mainstream Ramayans, but lots of Ramayans are there,
Hmm.
especially the Ramayans outside India. So suddenly the context changes. It is a father fighting for the daughter rather than a man who has kidnapped another man's wife. So the entire context of Ramayana changes. Like that, thousands of variations you find, which makes it
Hmm.
very fascinating.
It's interesting, Anand, what you say, because this brings me to another question, and that is about humanizing anti-heroes that you have done in your previous books. I mean, Ravan, of course, in Asura, then Vanaras in Vanara, and then women in Valmiki's women, for instance. And I was just curious, out of all these characters and out of all these anti-heroes, as it were, who do you think has been denied the empathy the most, and who do you think has been sort of wronged, as it were, in some versions of the
I
Ramayana?
think Ravana, the character of Ravana underwent a change after in the medieval period, especially in North India,
Hmm.
and he became a plain black and white, a black villain rather.
Hmm.
Black not as a skin color I am saying, but in a
Yeah,
language context in English associates black with evil.
evil.
Essentially, Indians don't associate that, but now we are trained to think like that
Hmm.
because black is the color of Krishna, Kali, and all. But in
Yes.
English, black is always associated with a villain. So Ravana attained that kind of character in the medieval North India, especially after the Tulsidas Ramayana, perhaps. Even though Tulsidas himself doesn't make him into a such a black villain, the lynching of Ravan, the burning of Ravan is confined to the spaces of Gangetic belt. So I think in the last 300 or 400 years, Ravan's character changed a lot, at least in the retellings, in specifically to the Gangetic belt. Whereas in the south and in other parts of the country, Ravan remains a villain, but it is also essentially he is also essentially understood as the Dwarapalaka, the gatekeeper of Vishnu, and he is also playing a role. And he is not an out and out villain. So many of the Shiva temples in the south, you find Ravan also, Ravan sculptures also in most of the temple, especially the lifting of the Kailas, and some places he is worshipped also.
Hmm.
It doesn't essentially mean that he is good and Ram is villainized. Even in Ram temples, you can find Ravan in many of the temples in the south, especially in villages, because uh, in the south, perhaps due to historical reason, the
Hmm.
storytelling of good versus bad, the total black and white one,
Hmm.
uh, didn't become popular, and it is and it was understood more as a tale of different versions of dharma, and
Hmm.
there was a kind of sympathy to both Ravan and Duryodhan. So there are Duryodhan temples also in the south. One of the famous one is in Kerala, where almost 5 to 10 lakh people come to worship every year.
Hmm.
The Duryodhan, uh, and he is worshipped along with Krishna also in the nearby temple. So
Right.
that contradiction, the common people never felt there is a contradiction in that. They understood
Hmm.
it's all part of Leela, and every character is important.
Right. We also tend to see Ramayana as a battle of good versus evil, and you're right that this is not a lens that we should actually look at, but rather as a story of karma and karma phala, that what you do action and then what you get as a return. So, Why do you think that later in interpretations, and especially we're talking about the uh, post bhakti perhaps traditions, that interpretations that look at these binary of morality, that what we
I
and
think
this
it is the influence of Abrahamic religions, Islam and Christianity,
yeah,
because
yes.
we can find that even though Bhakti Era strictly had started a few years before,
Hmm.
it matured during the Islamic invasion phase, and Islam or Christianity or Judaism or even communism, what we call, even though their origin is from the East, what we call as Western religions, all these four look at the world in a different way compared to the dharmic or the Bharatiya religions like Hinduism, Jainism, Buddhism, and all, or even the Chinese or Japanese folk religions and Confucianism and all. These are all two different ways of looking at life. So the Abrahamic religions usually see the world in black and white, God versus Satan, heaven versus hell, good versus evil, sin versus virtue, and so on and so on. So naturally, the Hollywood is influenced by that. The comic books of all the what you call Superman, Spider-Man, all of them follow the same pattern of good versus evil. It's a comic book interpretation based on the Abrahamic religion, whereas the Indic religions, the Bharatiya religions, they look this in a more nuanced way. So you can that is why Valmiki Maharshi didn't hide any of the flaws of Ram because he's in the human avatar. So you can find that Ram has to hide behind a tree and shoot Bali. He didn't hide it because that is a point where the poet pauses and makes the people to discuss and debate about dharma to reach their own understanding rather than just giving a commandment or instruction saying that this is right, this is wrong, and whatever Ram did is right, and whatever Ravan did is wrong, and it is good versus evil. It was never a tale like that. The moment we start thinking like good won over evil, then there should not be any evil. No, the God himself has come and vanquished the evil. Why is evil coming again and again? So there is a logical issue like if Mahabharata was a war of good versus evil, and if it was a good which won, then naturally a Satyuga or a virtuous age would have dawned. Instead, Kali Yuga had come. No? So what was it that won? Is it good or bad which won? If naturally if good had won, it a good era should have happened. But we are in Kali Yuga. So there is a logical inconsistency there. This happens because we are trying to impose the Abrahamic values into the Indian religion. For us, it is a constant choice of each person. You are given with dharma sankat at every moment. So sankat is like you don't know what is dharma or what is adharma based on your yukti, based on your experience, based on your culture, based on the advice of your gurus or the elders, based on the scriptures you have read, based on 100 other reasons, you take a decision. This may or may not be right decision, and it could be partially right and partially wrong too, like anything. It could be right for you and it could not be right for someone else. It could be right now and it can turn to be evil later, like how it happens in life. Whatever you do, there is a karma bhala. So when Ram kills Bali and we debate about the dharma and adharma, all those debates are fine, but the karma bhala will follow Ram also. So in the next Janma, Bali comes as Jara and kills Krishna the same way using an arrow, completing the cycle. So Ramayana cannot be read with in isolation, it has to be read with Mahabharata, and Ramayana and Mahabharata cannot be read in isolation, it has to be read in the total Puranic context. And this is an infinite loop of tales with various variation, teaching you to look at life and all its complexities and all its beauty and what's in uh, in a wholesome manner rather than juvenilely feeding you that this is right and this is wrong and we are right and you are wrong, and whoever are not with us are our enemies, unbelievers who has to be vanquished and killed or converted. This is the philosophy that led to Indians to think that all paths are like rivers going to the same ocean. Each will have its own course and path and its own taste. Some will follow a straight path, some will follow a crooked path, but all ultimately reach at the same ocean and all assume the same shape. And it is an unending cycle. The same ocean will get evaporated, it becomes clouds like Punarjanma, and again it falls back on earth and again it flows. This unending cycle of creation, sustenance, and destruction. That is what the universe is made of, and the same cycle is followed in life and death. Is what the Indian darshanas or the way of life is based upon, and Ramayana and Mahabharata follow that to the T. But when you try to impose the another value system of another society, which is not essentially wrong, because nothing is wrong in Indian philosophy, it is all just another method of doing right and wrong. But when you take another framework and put it here, essentially confusion comes, and that's why many people think Ramayana is the tale of good versus evil and Mahabharata is a tale of good versus evil, and there a lot of confusion arises, and people get confused why Surpanaga's nose was cut, why Ramji abandoned Sita, a lot of confusion
Mm,
arises out
mm,
of it.
mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. In fact, I was coming to that. You write somewhere that, and it's something that has resonated with a lot of people of late. That Ram's act of abandoning Sita in a way has also been the most sort of criticized actions, as it were. You write in the book somewhere towards the end. And I wanted to ask you if those who have also written these various versions of Ramayana, they also, you write that they arrive at this moment of pause. You describe it, and it's sort of uncomfortable. Is it something that's across all interpretations of Ramayana?
Uh, all interpretations have somehow tried to justify it in their own way. Some have even found alternate endings where Ram never abandoned Sita. So I have put the references of Ramayana where there is a happy. They are all the ending is very happy. They are all together, and like a 70s Hindi film, there's a group photo of Ram, Sita, Lakshman, Hanuman, Lev, Kush, everybody together. So that kind of ending has been given, rejecting the second time abandoning of Sita. Entire Uttar Ramayana has been abandoned. If you see Tulsidas ji's Ramayana, the Uttar Ramayana is about a philosophical debate with Kagabusandi, the tale of Ravana and all, and not the usual Uttaraganda what we associate with, where Sita is abandoned once again. So different saints, different rishis, different storytellers have gone through alternate endings for Ramayana. And some have given beautiful interpretations, some have justified it, some have criticized Ram and criticized harshly Ram even while being his devotee, which is also accepted in Indian tradition because even God is not above questioning. Everything has to be questioned, and it is for us to choose what is right and what is wrong. The ultimate responsibility is with the humans. It is not just blind obedience of the God, but rather using your own intellect, your own choices, and in every dharma sankat, thinking about it and taking responsibility for your action is what the Indian civilization is about.
Hmm. Hmm. Anand, Ramayana is also invoked these days in a different context sometimes. Sometimes it becomes a part of the political and cultural debates. And I was just curious to know your take on, do you see this is also a part of, its organic evolution in a way? And also, how does one reclaim this inherent dynamism of Ramayana in
See,
today's political?
Ramayana, among other things, as a tool of art, as a tool of literature, as a tool of culture, it has always been a tool of politics also. It is not the first time Ramayana has been used as politics. Even Gandhiji used Ramayana in his own way, the concept of Ramaraj in his politics. So Ramayana, depending on who is using it, has in politics, has assumed its own form. So usually the political Ramayana has been countered using the same Ramayana itself throughout the history. So many of the people who wanted to impose caste system used Ramayana itself to impose caste system. And many of the rishis and social reformers who fought against caste system, they also use the same Ramayana, telling their own narrative to fight against the caste system. So if Ramayana is used as a political narrative, it has to be fought using the same Ramayana as a political narrative. There is no other way because the story is so potent that it has shaped the civilization across Asia, and you can't ignore it. If the people who use it for political purpose knows its potency, and the people who wants to oppose that should never ignore the potency of Ramayana and use it itself to counter it. Is my take on it.
That's very well said, Anand. One last question about, you write somewhere, I think early on, that Ramayana is a story about discovering oneself, knowing one's passion, and changing for the better. And this idea of of this compassion for yourself and by extension the whole world, is that something that should be the key takeaway from Ramayana and in some ways Mahabharata as well?
See, there the take it's like a mirror.
Hmm.
Okay, you see yourself in it. So the takeaways will differ. I can only give what I took away from it. I can't say that that is the right takeaway. The purpose of these Ramayanas with so many versions, why so many versions came, is because so many people found their own takeaways, and whatever they didn't like, they rewrote, and that is why so many versions had come. But for me, what I argue is that Ramayana is itself, the very idea why Valmiki ji wrote Ramayana itself is the compassion. So the compassion is the key takeaway. The compassion to oneself, it starts with compassion to oneself, forgiving oneself, accepting oneself as how we are, and by extension, the compassion to the whole world. So, the Ramayana is a tale of kindness and compassion, and wherever it goes against that, there are many instances in Ramayana itself you will find where the story itself goes against the idea of compassion, or where perhaps we are not understanding it rightly, or perhaps it is written like that and there is no compassion in it and we are understanding it rightly. Either way is possible. Those things we can reject it. That's what a lot of rishis have done. There is nothing like unfailing word of God. Even Gita, when Krishna says and completes it, he says that accept what is acceptable to you. I have given you the deepest of knowledge. Whatever is acceptable in your time and the context, that only you should accept it. You accept and use it according to your yukti and according to your conscience, according to your intellect and conscience, you use it. Ramayana is also like that. For me, it is a tale of compassion, and wherever that compassion is not there, I will reject that portion of it and take what is required out of it. That's the purpose of all this. Thanks.
The Federal and Chettinadu Public School jointly present Run for Health Karegudi Marathon 2025 on March 2. This event is co-presented by Global Mission Hospital and Research Institute, powered by Repco Home Finance, associate sponsor Sedhu Bhaskara College.